basic package of documents that includes financial power of attorney. You know, it's really important if someone is going through this COVID-19 situation in their family, that it's clear who could step in and make financial decisions for them if they're incapacitated for a period of time. The same is true certainly for healthcare decision making. So that package of documents always includes a healthcare power of attorney. Living will is a document you want to have as a part of that package, which is really letting the world know how you would want things handled if it were really bad, if this were a terminal condition, and to just make sure your family knows what your wishes are and has the ability to do whatever they need to do for you during that time to follow your wishes. We also do a HIPAA authorization, which is really important right now for a lot of people, so that it's clear who has access to medical information, who can the doctors discuss my condition with. Most people assume that the doctor can speak to a spouse, that they can speak to family members, and that none of that's assumed. So we've got to have a document in place that clearly tells us, you know, who can my doctor speak with if I can't give them direction on that issue. And then finally, we need a will, right? We need if something were to happen and we're no longer here, we need to make sure that we are taking control of where our estate would go, how it would go. Most people are very concerned about protecting their loved ones if they're gone. You know, how do I protect my spouse? How do I protect my kids? Particularly in these uncertain times, economically and all of the above. How do I make sure that my family's protected in the way that I'm leaving things to them? So whether they're using a will to accomplish that or a trust, which we could get into more, a trust allows you to avoid the probate process, stay out of court with an estate. We're seeing that's really important right now. As you can imagine, the courts really aren't functioning fully right now. Some of them are barely functioning at all. Others are finding ways to get some done. But for someone who passes during this time, if their estate goes through probate, it's going to be a while. It's going to take a while to get through that. So those are some of the things that people need to think about, make sure they have, you know, sort of a current plan in place that makes sense.
Kind of on that, as a follow-up to that, and this is a little morbid, I guess, but if someone is kind of already going through this, they're quarantined, it's not looking good, and they don't have these documents in place, can you talk a little bit about, like, I think it's been, I've heard the phrase deathbed wills, things like that, like what can be done if the situation has already kind of gotten dire and they don't have documents in place? Are there like e-notaries? Does it have to be notarized? Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. There are definitely more options today than ever before, fortunately. Ideally, with a will, you know, we do need 2 witnesses and a notary. There are, you know, we can deal with less than ideal and sort of navigate those waters with the client. But ideally, we want to have 2 witnesses and a notary present so that we're not having to call people, particularly with a will, so that we're not having to call people to testify and as witnesses later if something happens. So, but the good news is right now that there's a lot, you know, this Zoom technology, there's a lot of technology that's coming around that's allowing us to do these plans remotely. I know I took on 2 new clients through our planning process this past Friday, you know, who live in a different city. And so we will have a completely remote process with them. Initial meeting, plan design. We are able to deliver almost all of the documents virtually now, you know, and have those documents signed virtually. We have an online notary here in our firm today, and so there's a lot we can do, you know, online through this process. So definitely more options than historically we've seen.
Appreciate that. Just a reminder to everyone on Instagram Live, you're welcome to pop questions into the comments. We'll try to get them as best we can. Legitimate questions, please. You're also welcome to shoot an email to asktheexpert@chordrealestate.com. Chord is CHORD, like the music chord. Again, asktheexpert@chordrealestate.com. We'll answer those while we're on the call or after the call if you still have questions remaining. So feel free to shoot us a question. Brock, you maybe talk to us about, are there some things we could be doing to get ahead financially, given the current situation? Like, what are the positives to where we're at right now?
Yeah. So some of the things that people are opening their eyes to right now, especially as people or towns are shutting down, kind of going into self-quarantine, our savings methods have started to lack a little bit in our economy. And so this is a great time to have people really start thinking about or utilizing saving at least 10 to 15% of their income, and really setting that emergency fund aside of 3 to 6 months of expenses saved up, so that if we do come into something like this, we know that we have 3 to 6 months of a buffer that we can pull from our expenses saved up and really set ourselves up for success.
Jay, can you talk a little bit about how to protect yourself, your family, if you've got real estate or a business or something like that? What are some of the mechanisms to sort of protect us right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, and that kind of gets into, the first question I was really talking about is estate planning aspect of our practice. And that question really pushes into sort of the asset protection component of what we do. And oftentimes those things are done in the same context. But yeah, for business owners, for real estate investors who are asking the question, what can I do to protect myself? We do a lot of that kind of work. And really, there's several things you can do. Starting with looking at those holdings and saying, how can I insulate myself from the liability that comes about through the real estate itself, for instance. So a lot of people are familiar with LLCs. That is one vehicle we use a lot in Tennessee. However, because Tennessee has made some law changes, tax law changes that put some pretty hefty taxes on those LLCs, we're also using trusts quite often today in asset protection planning. So we look at separating assets often as well when we do a plan for a client, so that we are not only putting necessarily the real estate in an LLC, but if we have some assets that may bring about risk in our lives, we have to ask ourselves, how do we protect the other assets that we have, right? So if I have a brokerage account, it may make sense to use a trust to protect that brokerage account. We also look at statutorily protected assets. There are some assets that are protected just by their very nature through state law. So for instance, cash value of life insurance is a significantly protected asset in Tennessee. So if someone is looking at their world and saying, how can I position some of my savings in such a way that it's protected, that would be one of the things we would look at. But yeah, there's a lot of things you can do. The issue is that they've got to be coordinated. We've got to make sure that we're looking at the whole picture, because what we don't want to do is rush out and get an LLC and suddenly find that we've got significant franchise and excise taxes. But there are vehicles out there. If we pull back, look at the whole picture, and start to design a plan, that can protect people.
Brock, do you want to comment on that too? Are there any things from your side of the world to sort of protect finances with what's going on right now?
Yeah, so one of the things that Jay touched on that our firm works with extremely closely with is the cash value of life insurance. in about just about every state. I think it's at 48 now. 100% of the cash value is creditor protected. You can kind of consider it an off balance sheet account. And as well, you just want to make sure that and sometimes going through all this, as we are pulling up our beneficiaries, we want to make sure that the beneficiaries on our retirement accounts that we have are to people that are either that we want or are actually still in our life. Sometimes if we don't have something named to somebody, it'll go straight to our estate, and that can cause a major headache without it going. It's going to have to go straight to probate, and it could stay there for months on end and could cost a whole lot of money doing so. So that's kind of one place that you want to look in your financial life.
Thanks. We did get a sort of a question on Instagram. I'm not exactly sure where they were going with this, but asked about abandoning their home. I'll just kind of get into this a little bit. Talking about forbearance, forgiveness of payments, that kind of thing. If you're unable to make a mortgage payment right now, there are protections in place. It's really on a lender by lender basis. So if you're having issues, you definitely need to be in contact with whoever you're making your payments to. There's going to be a number to call on your statement. So if you're having issue with payments, ideally you don't want to get yourself in a foreclosure situation. So lender to lender, it's going to vary. You really want to look at the fine print. There are a lot of lenders that are allowing you to defer payments to the end of a loan, but there are some that are basically deferring it for 2, 3, 4 months, and then you're expected to make it all up at once at the end of that 3 or 4 months. So you really have to make sure you know what you're getting into. If you are in a situation where you need to sell the home, obviously we've got a lot of restrictions in place right now. We actually have a virtual home buying and selling program that we use to try and minimize exposure. There are some restrictions in place. iBuyers have all pressed pause right now. A lot of the national institutional investors have all kind of pressed pause right now. But we do have local investors that have cash that are looking for deals. So if you need to get out of your current situation, we can definitely look at a quick exit if we need to. With an investor deal, or we can use our virtual program to try to get it on the market and get it moved as best we can. I will say, higher price points are definitely not getting as much traffic right now, but lower price points, anything under 300,000 in the Nashville market, we're still getting multiple offers on. We're doing deals. So if you're in a situation, you definitely want to jump on it as quickly as you can. Feel free to give us a shout. We'll kind of talk you through it. We'll get you in touch with these other guys too, and see what we can do to help. But hopefully that answers that question. Coming back to investment property, talking about LLCs. Jay, maybe you can talk about this. Are LLCs, the best option for holding real estate? Are there other options? We talked a little bit about FONSI and OME. Maybe you can kind of get into those things, how we can minimize liability and minimize taxes at the same time when we're dealing with real estate investments.
Yeah, Steve, that's a great question that we're dealing with a lot, as you can imagine. Traditionally, LLCs have been the best vehicle to use in Tennessee and in most markets for real estate investing. The challenge that we've had here in Tennessee, as you alluded to, is the franchise and excise tax applicable to LLCs in Tennessee. So there are some ways to minimize those taxes and even eliminate them. And we are helping clients, look at those options. You mentioned 2 of the exemptions that are available. There's the FONCE exemption, family-owned non-corporate entity, or FONCE, that a lot of people have used over the years, and particularly it really only applies for residential real estate investors. If more than 66.67% of your income is coming through commercial real estate, then you're still going to be subject to the franchise and excise tax. The FONCE exemption is not going to be helpful. The other exemption that a lot of people may have elected and may not even know exactly what they've done is OME, or obligated member entity. And so people that have elected OME, what they may not be aware of and what they need to be aware of is they've actually eliminated all the protections that come with the LLC. So obligated member entity exemption is really a way of saying, I don't want to pay F&E tax anymore, and so I'll give up all the protection that the LLC would provide for me. And so I've run into clients who have, their CPA has filed for that exemption, and they're not really aware that they've lost all the protection of that LLC. So that is something that we help clients look at. We are using trusts quite frequently now, asset protection trust. Tennessee has its own asset protection trust statute to help reduce or eliminate franchise and excise tax, either as an alternative vehicle to hold real estate, or sometimes we're using them in connection with LLCs to allow protection at the trust level and still eliminating the franchise and excise tax at the LLC level. So trust can be very helpful, and there are ways to, reduce or eliminate the franchise and excise tax. One of the things I think too that a lot of investors may not be aware of, though, is even with the FONCE exemption in the context of residential real estate, you may be exempt from FONCE from the standard year in and year out taxes, particularly on the excise tax, the 6.5% income, because it's passive income. However, if you go to sell a property, you're now no longer passive, and you're going to have a large gain potentially that would be subject to the tax at 6.5%. So we found that a lot of clients would like to understand some of these other strategies rather than just relying on the exemption like FONCE, because it's going to save them taxes in the long term when they go to sell. And that can really be a trap for the unwary if they're not aware of that.
Great information. Let's talk about business owners a little bit. With kind of the situation going on right now, if you get sick, if you can't run your business, if you have to close down for a while, what kind of things do you need to have in place to deal with those situations? Maybe Jay, you can talk about that. And Brock, if you've got anything to add to that.
Yeah, it's a great question. And unfortunately, something that, some Americans are going to be dealing with here as we deal with this crisis. These financial powers of attorney not only apply in the personal context, but often apply in the business owner context. So one of the things we work with our clients on that are business owners is making sure that we have a succession plan for their business. And that succession plan not only addresses if they pass away, what happens to the business, but what if I'm incapacitated? Do I have a plan in place, that puts people in control of the business that I want to be in control of the business? And that's sort of level one, right? Is making sure that the legal control passes over so that that person can run the business. And again, we're going to have a lot of people looking at this, during this time, the next few months. So super critical. Sometimes we can do that just through an expanded, sort of specialized, expanded financial power of attorney. A lot of our clients deal with it that way. Sometimes we deal with it at the entity level in operating agreements, et cetera, where we do a transition of authority under those documents. But clients need to make sure that they're looking at that. It's a super critical issue.
Yeah. To add to that, Steve, on the financial side of things, some of the things that you want to look at, if you're a business owner, make sure that your buy-sell agreements are funded. Usually those are funded with life insurance contracts, whether that be a term or a whole life policy. Make sure those are funded and up to date. Most business owners don't realize that if those buy-sells are funded or key man policies are funded by life insurance policies, if it's beyond 3 years, it's probably already too old and needs to be updated and looked by somebody. Our firm does that a ton, especially with Jay. Another thing you want to look at is Tennessee. Actually, we just went through a tornado. And so if somebody was to become too sick or too hurt to ever work again, some of the things that you want to talk about or think about are your disability insurance. Does it pay the right amount to you? Is it going to pay a claim for what you need? As well as workers' comp, make sure that's taken care of. And as well, just a very little thing is on your life insurance contracts, make sure you have a provision that's called, it's either going to be called disability waiver of premium or waiver of premium. And what this just says is if you become too sick or too hurt to work again, the life insurance company will pay your premium until you reach age 65 or you die, whichever comes first. So that way, you know that protection is still in your life and you don't have to worry about it for your family.
Hey, kind of a follow-up to that. We haven't really talked about this, but and I don't know if you deal with these much, but I know there's insurance you can get to make mortgage payments, those kinds of things. What's your thoughts on those, if you have any?
Yeah, so it's definitely a big thing right now. For those questions, that's not really totally in my realm, but in the financial aspect, if you really just cannot make your mortgage payments or some type of payment that you have to a bill and you need some insurance on it, I usually send things to either the Montgomery and Associates Insurance Group or Tucker Agency Group. Depending on what type of client it is, I usually defer to those two guys as those firms have some great experience, knowledge, and education on what really needs to happen with that.
Awesome. A couple more things we'll cover. Just to remind everybody on Instagram Live, if you have any questions, just pop them into the comments or shoot us an email at asktheexpert@chordrealestate.com. Feel free to shoot that email over at any point. We'll answer it after the broadcast is over too. Just a couple more things to get into. I know there's a provision in the CARES Act for waiving the 10% early withdrawal fee for retirement funds. There's restrictions around it. I don't know for sure. You have to have been, I guess, identified as having corona or something related to that. But what's your opinion on taking those early disbursements with that early withdrawal penalty being waived?
Yeah. So that's something that you want to look at. But if you want to take a step back and look at it, that might be one of your last resorts on a place of money that you go to, because as we're seeing our markets decline, pulling money out of that account might not be the best thing to do at this moment, as it'll just increase your decline incredibly. So I think you should look at it if it's a very last resort. But I think you should be able to take income from other places, your savings, different opportunities. So have it in mind, but make sure that it's a last resort and want to be sure that you understand that that's there for retirement and you don't want to disrupt that growth that you have going on.
I guess that's a good point. If you pull the money out when the market starts back up, you're probably going to take a lot bigger loss than the 10% penalty you would have paid.
Yeah, much bigger. And something that also that needs to be noted is when you take that income from that account, there will be taxes due. There won't be any penalty, but there will be taxes due. They're not due immediately, I don't think, but they will be spread out over 3 years. And so you want to be sure that you really go through with your advisor or somebody on our team to help you really walk through that.
Awesome. let's see. What are some easy rules we be following moving forward with our finances? If we haven't been doing it up to this point, what are some things we should be doing? I think on Instagram here we probably have a lot of millennials, so maybe kind of talk about getting started at a younger age and the benefits of that as well.
Yeah. So I really three main rules that you should think about are: first, you want to make sure that your protection is in place for just the maximum amount, because we can't, if we were talking about our life insurance, we can't come back from the dead and say, hey, I'd like some more life insurance. If we were to first send our money into the stock market and it crashes, well, we can recover and come back from that, but we can't recover our insurance. So that's something that we really want to have in place, is our insurance. That's auto, home, liability, your disability insurance, your medical insurance, your wills, trust, your life insurance. And then you want to go down to, you want to start saving about 10 to 15% of your income, and make sure that you're putting it in places that really is saving and not investing, because there's a big difference there. And then make sure that we do have that buffer of 3 to 6 months of emergency savings, so that if something like this were to occur, or we lose our job, or something happens, we have a 3 to 6 month buffer to either go find something else to do or wait for recovery to come along.
Awesome. Jay, do you want to jump in on that too? Or are there things everybody should be doing right now if you haven't done it already? Or are there things millennials should be thinking about that they don't often think about?
Yeah. So, I mean, as far as sort of what I do, the legal aspect, I think just making sure you've at least got these very basic documents in place: financial and healthcare powers of attorney, just sort of to be responsible at this point in time. You could be in a position where for a period of time, you're not able to take care of those things. And so, people sometimes ask me, so what size of an estate do I need to have before I do a will, or before I do some of these basic documents? And the reality is, if there's anything at all, if you're going to leave life insurance behind, if you're going to leave assets behind, do you really want to leave a mess? All this is about is just sort of taking responsibility and trying to organize things and leave it in such a way that it carries out your wishes and doesn't leave a mess for your family. So that's what I would say there. I really can't agree more with Brock in terms of sort of those basic financial rules. As someone who's got a little more gray going, you start early, guys. You can never really make up for those years of savings, for instance, that if you get by it, and it never feels like the right time, to increase savings. So I just encourage people to just build it in early on and often. There are a lot of good younger people in this generation. I have a daughter who's college age, who are just doing some really bright things, whether that's live at home for a little while and save up some money, get a head start that way. But if you institute those habits early on, it pays off in spades.
Brock, I'll put you on the spot a little bit. We've had a lot of market volatility here lately. Obviously, I think somebody's going to make a lot of money in the stock market with stocks dropping as much as they did. Obviously, we're going to go back up, but just want to get your thoughts on investing in stock, investing in real estate. Maybe talk a little bit about our holistic approach and having everybody kind of on the same page with things, if you kind of cover that.
Yeah. So what we're seeing now is people are kind of living in what I like to call the financial junk drawer. They've bought all this different stuff that they think they need in their financial life from different people, different circumstances, different reasons, different times in their lives. And you just really kind of throw it in the drawer like everybody has in their kitchen. And it's in there. You just don't really know what it's doing. So all those decisions you've made might not be integrated and coordinated with one another. So then might not be working together to its highest and best use. So we want to be really efficient in what we're doing with our money. As we're going through this pandemic market downturn, a lot of people are starting to really realize that they're giving up a lot of control of the dollars that they have today, whether that be in their retirement plans, the stock market, whatever that may be. They're giving up their control of their dollars to somebody else, to an account, when the actual realization is that you are your greatest and best asset. And when you realize that and you put your money towards you and what you can do for this world, that'll take some major benefits in your life. As it pertains to investing, there's a lot of different people out there that are going to give you tons of different ideas on what to invest in. We know the stock market is going to continue to go down, and we know the stock market is going to go up. Make sure that whoever you're listening to, they're doing what if they recommend you something, ask them if they're doing it as well. Make sure that what you invest in, you do a little bit of research on, you talk to them about it, you make sure it's a good thing to do. In our line of work, as we work with our clients, and you can speak to this, Steve and Jay, but we really like the approach of cash flow and control and liquidity. And that comes from putting money in places that we control, whether that be our savings account, our life insurance accounts, and in real estate. That way we are acting really at our maximum potential, our maximum financial potential, rather than trying to just base everything off needs and goals. And we really want to have the maximum money supply and benefits along the way. And, what we're going through, nobody's ever gone through before. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. There's going to be some billionaires that come out of this with the ideas that are being thought of in this downtime.
Now, I'll speak into real estate a little bit. Obviously, that's sort of my forte, but that we've had questions here lately. Is it a good time to buy? Good time to sell? That kind of thing. We've kind of seen buyers and sellers a little polarized right now. Sellers think, well, inventory is so low. A lot of listings aren't coming on the market because people don't want, obviously a bunch of random strangers walking through their house right now. So there's just not a lot to look for. So the people that are having to move right now because they've already sold something and they need a place to live, or they're transferring in for a job, something like that. We've got them over a barrel. So we're going to be really aggressive in our pricing. We're going to stick to our guns, and we're not going to negotiate on things. But we've got buyers that are coming in thinking, that the world is turned upside down, and these sellers have no idea what's going to happen with the market. There's so much volatility and risk and everything. I'm going to get a deal. So it's been interesting trying to do negotiations with buyers and sellers here over the last couple of weeks, because they've got such different opinions on where we're at. But I will say, if you are in a stable position to buy, if you're comfortable with where your career is right now, you've got some savings, and you're in a good financial position, it's always better to buy than it is to rent over the long term. Now, obviously, if you're going to be moving in a year, it makes sense for you unless we find you a great deal. But historically, over the long term, rents are going to increase. If you have a 30-year fixed mortgage, your payments don't go up, and you're basically, it's a forced savings account. You're building equity over time. So always a good idea to buy real estate, in my opinion. But and now's a great time. Interest rates are really low. With risk, some of the rates are going up, some of the requirements are going up. But historically, rates are incredibly low right now. There's probably not as much competition right now because people are not wanting to get out as much. I think when this blows over, barring this lasting for a really, really long time, which nobody's anticipating, but when this all blows over, there's going to be a lot of pent-up demand. There's going to be a lot of multiple offer situations. I think now is a great time, if you're in a good position to do it, to go out there and buy something. So,
Steve,
Jay,
it looks like we have a question from Jay.
let's see. If you're looking for investment, rental, how can you get in with a minimal amount of down payment? It's really a question I can defer to our mortgage guy to get you a better answer on. I will tell you, you know, certain loan types are definitely getting squeezed a little bit right now. Investors, you know, typically are having to put 15 to 20% down. Yeah, there's all kinds of options. Everything is in our world is kind of an it depends answer. You know, you get into commercial deals, for example, you could be looking at some financing. You know, it runs the game. So I hesitate to give you a blanket answer, other than let's talk about your situation and see what makes sense, and if there are options for you that aren't necessarily there for everyone. So it depends on what you're investing in. That's not a great answer, I guess, but
Jay, did you have something to add?
Yeah. Really mainly on the going back to, I think, sort of that last question, but I'll address that as well. But, you know, sort of how holistically we're working together as a group of professionals and looking at investing over the long term and financial life. I think what Brock said earlier is really powerful in that, you know, we're learning right now why everyone always told us to have 6 months cash of our expenses sitting around. I mean, there are a lot of people, you know, you can say it, you can say it, you can say it, but now people are going to feel that, right? They're going to feel the pinch through this, whether it lasts that long or not. You know, everyone's thinking, how long could I go? How long could I last through this, right? And so,
hey, by the way, you should know what 6 months of expenses are, which I think a lot of people don't even pay attention to what that looks like.
that is a really good point, Steve. You're exactly right. And that in and of itself gets more complicated as you go, not from just your personal world, but your business world, right? And knowing what that looks like, or your investment world with real estate. But just to quickly speak to that sort of holistic approach that I think is so valuable. You know, people are really quick sometimes to jump into these markets with their savings early on, and we see the illiquidity that can come, right? Can come very quickly when your, you know, account gets hit, the way accounts have been hit. So I just think, you know, cash is king. Get your savings up early. Look for savings vehicles that are safe and stable. Collect some cash. As Brock was said earlier, you know, work with someone like Brock and Steve who can help you maximize your own unique ability. If you're good at real estate and want to learn and get involved with that, get with these professionals. You know, Steve can get you with a lender who can help you understand all your options, and so can Brock. So just thinking a little outside the traditional financial box. You know, most of my clients who've built significant wealth didn't do so in an IRA or 401k, right? They did so with business, with real estate, with investing in themselves as either a salesperson or, you know, however they've gone about creating their wealth. So I love the way, you know, we get to see our clients working with a holistic group of professionals to really maximize their wealth over time. And that's typically not always the most traditional way. There are definitely a place, obviously, for retirement plans and you know, investments in the traditional markets, but you've got to take care of cash needs first. And you got to have your protection in place and safety, and then you can take advantage of opportunities like we're going to see right now. And Steve, maybe you could speak to what you see in terms of what opportunities may be out there as a result of this.
Yeah, I mean, there's always opportunities. You know, depending on how long this goes, obviously, you know, situations could change, but opportunity doesn't go away. It just kind of shifts places. So, you know, depending on your situation and you know what you've got available, how risk averse you are, you know, there's always opportunity out there. So it's really a case by case basis. You know, we try to look at everybody as a unique individual and or business, and really kind of dive in and figure out what makes the most sense for you, not just for one transaction, but over the course of your lifetime. You know, what are your goals? What are you trying to achieve? And how does that fit in with, you know, what you guys are doing as well? So, you know, there's definitely opportunities. There's always opportunities. You know, there were a couple of things that scrolled through on Instagram. I just want to talk about a little bit. You know, there's a couple of small businesses that had thrown up something about what they're trying to do, and somebody asking if things are ever going to get back to normal, I guess. You know, times like these, I think, are times when people innovate. You know, businesses will adapt and overcome, and things will come back. You know, we're doing a lot of things online now. There's been definitely a big push to do a lot more things electronically. You know, I think those kinds of things will stay with us for the good. You know, I think things, you know, in our business will streamline. You know, we'll get much easier to do for everyone, much more convenient. So I think good things will come out of this. I definitely think we'll get back to you know, big gatherings and those kinds of things again, because people like to be social. But I think a lot of innovation will come out of this time. Certainly in the real estate industry, we're seeing a lot of things that are I would even say improving because of the situation we're in right now. So, I mean, I think long term it's a good thing. Maybe you guys can talk about changes you've seen in the financial world as well. But one other thing I'll throw out there is, you know, obviously for the small business guys that posted, support your small businesses. You know, get out there and get some takeout or whatever you can do to help out the guys that are struggling right now. And I know a lot of people are having a hard time, but maybe you guys can talk a little bit about innovations that you guys are seeing kind of in your worlds.
Yeah, I'd be glad to. Yeah, I think I agree with you. You know, this too shall pass. This too shall pass. We will be back together in large gatherings before long. I know there's some uncertainty about how long that will be, but I do believe that everything's going to be okay, and this too shall pass. And we need to stay connected as best we can. The technology and the changes, I really believe we're going to see some tremendous things come out of this. You know, I think good comes out of everything. And we've already seen it in terms of our adaptation of new technologies. I think, you know, it's interesting that we've had this video technology available, but this is kind of a forcing function right now. Now we have to figure out how do we use it and innovate in our various businesses. So I think we'll go from either we can't have a meeting or it has to be limited to the phone, you know, where there's really not much, it's limited interaction, or we have to be together in a meeting to sort of get to that middle ground of we can do this, you know, we don't have to drive 3 hours to be able to see each other face to face. So I don't think it replaces in-person meetings by any stretch. I think that's critical, especially in establishing new relationships. But I hope as a society, we learn to adapt some of these technologies, you know, just to make life better and to stay better connected with each other. You know, FaceTime came out, I think, as sort of an early example of this technology. And it's interesting. You think about when you use FaceTime. Typically, it's only in intimate settings, right? We do it with our parents, we do it with our kids, with our spouse. But you don't typically call your buddy and FaceTime them. I hope that changes, right? I do. I just, you know, maybe this will teach us that we can utilize and leverage these technologies, you know, to keep relationships up and to leverage relationship. But even outside of just the video technology, which we just happen to be using, I think you'll see tremendous innovation come out of this. Anytime resources are tightened, we have to go to the, you know, we have to figure out how to do it differently. We have to figure out how to be more efficient. And so we're already seeing in my own business, my own practice, significant improvements in how we do things. So I'm real optimistic about the changes that'll come out of this.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. There's a lot of innovation happening. My team has been doing work across the United States and Canada for a few years now. That's how we do majority of our meetings is virtual. But the whole entire financial world is really starting to pick up on the virtual meetings. And life insurance contracts are going online. Wills and trusts are going online. You have investment portfolios online. Your financial plans can all be found online. And it's really a great opportunity for people to take advantage of, because maybe before this time, while we were working, everybody was a little too busy to go see their advisor, but now you can see them at the convenience of your home. I know that's certainly something that we do. We've had a meeting pretty much every hour of the working day so far for the past 2 or 3 weeks that we've all been at home. And so that's something that you should really ask your advisor about, or others that you want to work with, is if they're capable of doing virtual meetings with you and do the whole planning process.
Awesome. I did see a question scroll through about whether or not we'll be shut down for 2 weeks. And that's, who knows? That's not really a question I don't think we can answer. I think, potentially it could happen, but I don't think that really changes what's happening right now too much. I mean, we're all trying to work from home as much as possible. I've actually I've talked to a lot of people in my industry about and actually I saw I think Gary Vee, if anybody follows Gary Vee, put out about working from home. He was always very opposed, thinking couldn't be productive working from home, but a lot of people have found that they're more efficient now because they're able to do these virtual things, and there's not drive time, and they end up getting more done when they're really focused on it. Now a lot of people are taking this as an opportunity for an extended vacation, and are going to come out of this hurting probably. But if you're sticking to a routine and you're focused on growing your business, growing yourself, taking this as an opportunity to do online training, those kinds of things. I mean, I think there's a lot of opportunity to be very productive working from home, whether there's a lockdown or not. But we're wrapping up. I'll let you guys tell everybody how to get a hold of you, what's the best way to reach you, those kinds of things. Brock, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, so you can definitely reach me by email at Brock Fortner at StoneCenturyFinancial.com, or you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest and best way to get a hold of me. Would love to talk, and always free to a conversation.
Yeah, so my law firm again is Legacy Law Group. We're in Brentwood. Website is legacylawtn.com. My email address is jay@legacylawtn.com. And our phone number is 615-933-7636. So we offer free initial consultations for anyone who's interested in just having a conversation, much like Brock. We can do that and see if there's anything that we might be able to do to help. Love to help.
And obviously, Chord Real Estate, you can go to our website, chordrealestate.com. It's CHORD, like the music chord. We're on Music Row. So feel free to go to our website. Our phone number is 615-988-1001. You can also go to connectwithchord.com. It'll take you directly to our sort of our About Us page with all our social media links. But we're on pretty much all the platforms. Feel free to DM us on any of the platforms. Whatever is easiest for you in terms of communication. We want to make it easy on you. So however you need to get a hold of us, we'll be there for you. Anything you guys want to say to wrap this up, or we're good? All right.
Good.
Well, I appreciate everybody for joining us today. I hope you found this information helpful. Again, if you have any questions that pop up, you think about later on that you'd like to get answered, feel free to shoot us an email at asktheexpert@chordrealestate.com, and we will get you that info. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Steve.